Well, it's now time for the big interview, and as I'd promised you earlier on in studio, I'll be joined by Jane Ngatia, who is a counseling psychologist, and she's already in studio. Karibu sana, Jane, to the studio.
Thank you.
Well, a lot has been said about the negative effects of the demonstrations to the economy, but are there any psychological effects to the same, and if they are there, what are they?
Yes, we have a lot of psychological impact. Actually, what we are seeing is not just a demonstration. We are also talking about violence. And it's important for us to remember that human beings, when they are exposed to violence, it triggers much more than what we may imagine. It is good to remember that some of us in this country have been exposed to violence before, probably at family level, social level, or even national level. We have had a series of violence that have happened because of probably this reason or another, sometimes not necessarily at the political volume that we are seeing it, but people do get affected. Think of probably people who are doing business, and that has been said a lot. What does it mean to probably not have gone to work because of the fear of attack, of losing the only thing that they have? That is very stressful. The Kenyans who have stayed home because of the fear of what may happen during the demonstrations is not definitely a walk in the park. People have been stressed. Think of even children who probably didn't go to school at different times when demonstrations have been declared. I wonder what parents tell their children when they don't go to school. The concept of demonstration can also be very abstract for the very young ones, but that does not mean that they are not affected psychologically. Children keep asking, what is the problem? Where is the problem? Yet I believe parents and other caretakers may not be able to explain what is going on. You and I know too well, and it's a fact, children do not get involved in political climates that prevail. Definitely, children didn't vote, but where are they caught in this kind of confusion? So we need to spare them. It is possible that a child or even an adult who has been exposed to violence before, seeing weapons being carried, seeing two sides exchanging in a bad way, could also get traumatized. And as a psychologist, and many other psychologists would say, that can have far-reaching effects, negative effects, than we can even imagine. So there is stress, there is possible trauma, there's even more conflict that may be created because out there, if the person didn't go to work, they don't bring food home. And if they don't bring food home, then it means more conflict at family level. So this needs to be managed in a better way to avoid more stressful situations. The psychological impact is probably even more serious than we can imagine. That's what I say. In one voice, as psychologists, we want our children to be spared. We want other adults who have multiple problems, persons even with already underlying mental issues, they can be triggered because of this exposure. What we are seeing on the media, and it's true, that's what's happening on the ground, is probably very, very destructive at the end of the day. So we need a solution to this so that people can live more psychologically healthy lives.
Well, Jane, some may say that they are not engaging in the demonstrations, and therefore it may not affect them in any way. Do you think that it is also affecting those who are not participating in the demonstrations indirectly?
Yes, it is true that it is possible that even a person who is not involved so directly will get what we call even secondary trauma. Reason, this thing is, allow me to call it contagious in a way. The effect, the ripple effects will keep going and going. And some people will even get nightmares. So it is important that we don't have a conflict that gets to a level where people are exchanging, being hit, falling down, being injured, bleeding, and even the shouting and all that. There are people who are going to be affected by this. And again, I would like to point out, what are we telling our children? Is this how we resolve conflicts when they arise? We could also create a generation that may not directly be participating now, but they are seeing, they can see, they can make out something. And in the future, these children, these young people, when they grow up, how do they resolve problems? You just exchange. I mean, it's a question of, did I hit you and you fell? And who won? That kind of thing. Other than sitting down, talking about where the problem is, resolving conflicts amicably. Very many lessons to learn and many negative effects to be avoided from what we are seeing.
Well, Jane, talking of conflict resolution, and now that both sides of the divide, the government and the opposition, have rejected calls for a dialogue, from where you sit as a counseling psychologist, what are some of the solutions do you think can help in the standoff between the government and the opposition?
That is a very important question and an important observation there. Yes, we have 1,000,001 ways of resolving conflicts. We don't have to go to the streets, carry weapons, hit people, destroy property, and so on and so forth. That in itself will not resolve the conflict. There's always a way in which people can be able to talk. If they are willing to talk, it is important that they talk it out. But it is also important, some of these violent demonstrations involve people who get out of their homes, who get out of maybe their offices, their businesses, and they get to the streets. Probably the most important question is, for all of us Kenyans, if I went to the streets, yes, I'm making a point, but at the end of the day, does it solve the problem? Does it give me the peace that I want? Or does it make it worse? So it is important that people consider what is at stake. One way of resolving conflicts is to have a critical approach of what is at stake. Is it people's shops that will be broken into? Is it failure to go to work? Is it that child that didn't go to school? Is it that teacher who didn't do their job? What is at stake? Is it possible that a few people get behind those offices, sit and amicably resolve the problem? It doesn't help just to get out into the streets. So if I get to the streets, I need to have a good reason that should be the last resort. I mean, that should be the only solution left for me to carry out or to implement. But otherwise, there are many, many ways, but always think what is bigger, what is more critical, what is at stake before I make this particular decision or I take this particular step.
All right, now with the High Court having ruled in favor of Azimio to go on with the weekly protests, what are some of the ways in which one can maybe safeguard their mental health during these weekly demonstrations, now that we don't know when the demonstrations are going to be called off?
I consider that a very important observation there. It remains a personal responsibility to be able to safeguard one's own mental health. If you don't want to be hurt, why do you want to go there? If you know that at the end of the day, you are going to be insulted, you are going to be offended, you are going to fall, you are going to be run over, why do you want to go there? So it remains our responsibility at personal level, at family level, at society level, that small community, at the national level, to make sure that people are not exposed. But it all begins with me. My mental health is purely my personal responsibility. And I need not expose myself. I need not be triggered. If already I have an underlying issue, I need not expose myself anymore. We always say, avoid stressors. If you know you go to a place, you talk to certain people, you join certain groups and get stressed, why do you want to go there? Prevention is always better than cure. And if we followed that path, psychologists will have an easier job. In this country, psychologists and mental health professionals have a lot of work. We have so much about people's mental health. And we want to build a country where people are healthy, wholesome. They can be able to contribute to nation building. We can be able to have strong families, and we can be able to build the community. And furthermore, for the future generations, we need no more work on counseling people who simply got traumatized because they were exposed to some, kind of situations that triggered more, and they are not able to sleep. They have nightmares and all that kind of thing. So it's possible, it can be done, and together we can do it.
Well, Jane, we've seen many people go into the streets, and today some really invaded the property of the former President Uhuru Kenyatta and actually stole sheep and burnt the place. I mean, do you think Kenyans are really stressed to the point that they can go and just steal and burn property?
I think that is one indicator that we have a very stressed community. Kenyans are stressed, right, left, center. Talk of the economic pressure, which sometimes is a global problem or crisis, but we can work it through. So when people go out because there is something happening, so probably they take advantage of that, or they could even be, they are doing this to me, so I want to do this to them as well. That is an indicator that we have so many of our Kenyan people in our communities who are actually living with this stress. And that's very dangerous for any nation. We need to stop where we are. We cannot have it escalate beyond those levels, because also stress levels have a limit. If we get beyond there, there's a breaking point, and our body mechanisms will not be able to withstand the pressure that comes. And in life, there's always things that don't work right for us. Things will not always move in a straight line. So we need to have resilience. We need to have capacity. So those are people who have no resilience. They do not have the capacity anymore. They have run out of their patience. Anger management is probably at 0 level, and we have angry people around us. I suggest for Kenyans, let's take responsibility. Collectively, we can be able to avert certain situations, and more so for the future generations. Think about our children who are growing up now. What are they being exposed to? And as a child psychologist, I believe children have a right to be protected from such violence, from such ways of resolving conflicts that do not actually work. That's my suggestion for Kenyans. Together, we can do.
Talking of children, and we saw one man today, I believe it's in the city of Kisumu, with his own child going to the demonstrations. Do you think any action should have been taken for this man who took his child to the demonstrations?
Oh yes, that is very serious, but it is also very sad and unfortunate. Children should not be exposed to any form of violence. May it be domestic violence, gender-based, child abuse, in school, out there in the community. That is very unfortunate, and that child, first of all, need to be helped through counseling. Child, psychologists know that the child must have been traumatized and also confused. So what kind of generation would that child belong to, or other forms? So that's unfortunate. It should not happen. And parents, and other child caregivers, we need to protect our children. We need a future. We need a country called Kenya where children have grown well, mentally healthy, psychologically stable, and they are able to carry on. And furthermore, let's teach them how to resolve conflicts as opposed to exposing them to violence and where people don't seem to resolve conflicts. And by the way, children trust adults. So when children see adults fighting, exchanging blows, they get confused. They are not sure which way. So that's serious, and children must be protected. All people need to be protected, and all of us, I say together, we can make it and we can do better than this.
As we conclude, Jane, is there any hope for the nation, even as we go through this season of demonstrations? Is there any hope?
Oh yes, there's a lot of hope. We never give up hope. Hope is the last thing you can afford to lose. So there's hope in Kenya. There is hope in the international community. And what we need is people not to lose that last straw that we are holding on to. We must cultivate that hope by doing it differently so that other people can have the hope to live as opposed to the, despair and giving up altogether. So there's hope, but it lies in our hands. We are the destiny that we want to see. With God helping all of us, we can make it.
Thank you so much. That has been Jane Ngatia, who is a counseling psychologist. Thank you so much for the great insights.